Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming here today. How's everyone doing? Good? Yeah. So today we will be talking about some of our local heroes in our Fairfield. We don't have to look very far to see where there are signs of an already resilient community. Building circular models can be achieved at any scale, and it is certainly happening all around us here in Southeast Iowa. Just to show you the variety of possibilities for that circular models can look like, we have 4 local heroes presenting this afternoon. First, for more than 30 years, Francis Thicke has been a pioneer in his approach to building a circular dairy model. Francis, a PhD in soil science, along with his wife Susan, own and operate an 80-cow, grass-based organic dairy on 730 acres near Fairfield. Although Francis is the recipient of numerous awards, including the 2009 Spencer Award for Sustainable Agriculture from the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture, the Sustainable Agriculture Achievement Award from Practical Farmers of Iowa, and the Steward of Land Award from the Iowa Sierra Club, and the Friend of Extension Award from the ISU Extension Service. But his greatest achievement is really his generative dairy farming model right here at home. A little note to the uninitiated, Radiance Dairy kicks off the summer season with his amazing soft ice cream available at everybody's. Please welcome Francis Thicke.
Thank you. So today's all been about the circular economy. And what I want to do here is talk about that circular economy applied to agriculture and food system, but also look at the industrial model. Because a lot of us are working in this area, in that Radiance area, we're trying to talk about that, working with ecology. But most of our agriculture is over here in the I call it the linear models. It's not, closer? Oh, okay. And it's really important to see those differences. If we're going to try to get over here, we need to see where we are. And the linear model, it's been a degrading model. We've lost half of our topsoil since we started farming in Iowa, and we lost 60% of our organic carbon in the soil. So we've been deficit spending our ecological capital all these years. But now if we look at the circular model, it's nature's ecology that really is the model. 12,000 years ago when the glacier left northern Iowa, there wasn't any soil at all. It was just a wasteland. But nature's ecology slowly built up in 12,000 years the most productive soils in the world. And so that circular model, it's not even circular, it's spiral upward. Every time it goes around the circle, it's more and more. It creates more and more ecological capital. But now in this model, we're losing our ecological capital. And I want to look from the level of the molecular level up to the global food system. If you start at the low level, you always hear about NPK fertilizer, right? Well, in the industrial model, the phosphorus mostly comes from Morocco for fertilizer. The potassium probably from Canada. The nitrogen comes from probably fracked methane from natural gas that makes the nitrogen fertilizer. And so that's all coming from a great distance. And then where does the food go? Farmers say consumers don't know where their food comes from, but farmers don't know where their food goes to either. And actually a study of where all the corn and soybeans that go down the Mississippi River, what they found is that less than 1% goes to food deficit countries. Farmers like to say, we feed the world, which is not true at all. And we shouldn't try to feed the world. The world should feed itself. We should look for circular economies there too, sovereignty in our food. But less than 1% goes to food deficit countries. So we're really feeding the affluent with what we're doing here. And about 60% of our corn goes to ethanol. And I've calculated out for every gallon of ethanol that we produce in Iowa, we lose a gallon of topsoil to erosion. And for every acre that goes to make ethanol, we lose 30 pounds of nitrate to the groundwater, to our water resources, and then eventually to the dead zone. So it's really, if you look at it this way, 2 models, the circular model and the linear model. The linear model has all these negative side effects. We have soil erosion, we have water quality problems, air quality problems, flooding, all aggravated by this, our wildlife habitat loss. And the circular model has all these beneficial side effects of improving our water quality, soil erosion, and we can enhance all these same factors just by this circular model. And if we look at the differences, in the industrial model, we have corn and soybeans, and that covers 2/3 of Iowa's land surface. in every given year. So it's basically monoculture. The two cultures, corn and soybeans, have the same growth habits, but they only grow for about 5 months of the year. So during most of the year, there's nothing growing. It's really an ecological desert in our industrial system, and that is why we have so much nitrate pollution. People think that our water quality problems are from some bad apples out there doing it. No, the system is fundamentally flawed. It's leaky because there's nothing living on the soil during most of the year. And so when it rains, it takes the nitrate down to the tile drains, right to the river and out. And so it's a flawed system, and that's a problem. It's not unfortunately, it's not widely known because certain organizations like to keep us from knowing that. So now if we look at the two different models, in the ecological model, at that level, there's all these microbes there, all this diversity. In an industrial model, we don't have much diversity at all. 2 crops, not much diversity, but every plant's rhizosphere seems to have different colonization of different microbes, bacteria and fungi and so on. And so when you have a lot of diversity, like think of a prairie, all that diversity of plants. And different plants, some have deep root systems, some have shallow fibrous systems, all these different plants, and different roots colonize different kinds of microorganisms. So we have all this diversity going on here, whereas in the industrial system, we do not have that. And so as we come up the scale, and so many more plants that are recycling, in the ecological system, everything is cycled and recycled. There's no waste in the system. The waste of one species is food for other species. It's all taken back up again. As a matter of fact, research shows that in a prairie system, you can't even hardly leak any nitrate out at all. It's just like, it just grabs it. And maybe, in nature, there has to be a little bit of leakage. And of course there is, because you have to feed the aquatic life in the rivers, in the lakes, and in the ocean. The most productive part of the ocean is the continental shelf around the edges of the continent. That's because some nutrients come down the rivers and feed it. Now what happens if we get too much, it causes eutrophication, it causes all these problems because we're overloading it. Now if we're looking at the plant level, in the industrial system it's very meager, 2 crops mostly. In the ecological system, on our farm, our cows are grazing probably 10 species or more of different grasses. We're kind of trying to mimic the prairie system. And remember, before we came here, there were millions of bison, and they were roaming around in the herds, and the grass would go tall and deep-rooted, and then bison would come in and graze it off or knock it all down what they didn't graze. And then it would slough some of that root mass off in the ground and then grow new tops and new roots. And so these grazing episodes would build the soil organic matter. It built it up and up and up. We're doing the same thing in our pastures. We have 60 small pastures. So twice a day, after each milking, the cows go into a new pasture. Then they come out into the next one. And they go move around the farm. When they get around, they're back to the original one, which is regrown again. And it has rebuilt the root system. So we're trying to rebuild our ecological capital. On our farm, when we came there about 30 years ago, all the topsoil was gone in a lot of areas. We're down to the subsoil. It was kind of like the glacier just left, and we're starting over. But we've built it up a lot. We soil tested last fall, and we found out that we have really increased our soil organic matter quite a bit. So it's exciting. So now we looked at the level of the nutrients, the differences, and the level of the microbes, the difference in the plants, and the animals. Now, in our grazing system, the cows are out there. We open the next pasture, they come in there, they harvest their own food, they spread their own manure right where it needs to be, they enjoy their work. And because they're in their natural environment, they're healthier and happier, you might say. Now, most animals are in CAFOs. You all know what CAFO is, a concentrated animal feeding operation. And so what you have to do with that now, the cows are confined here. You have to go out somewhere and harvest their feed, bring it to them, feed them, then collect their manure and take it back out into the field. Whereas in the grazing system, the cows do all the work. And they're building the ecology at the same time. And when the cows put manure on the pasture, right under that cow patty, there are billions of bacteria just waiting for a meal. And they degrade that manure and cycle the nutrients back in, and it's done aerobically. It's done in a way that doesn't smell. Whereas the CAFO, the industrial model, the cows and pigs here in Iowa, but if you say CAFO in Wisconsin, they think of a dairy. 10,000 cows, 5,000 cows. That manure in that liquid storage pit, it turns anaerobic. And so in that anaerobic state, it creates about 300 volatile organic compounds. So when you smell a CAFL, you're not smelling the cows or the pigs. You're not even smelling the cow manure or the pig manure. You're smelling all those chemicals that are created from putrefying that manure. And so that's what you smell, and those are the toxic compounds. Okay, great, thank you. And so, so that's the key thing to remember, that when the manure, how it's treated makes a big difference, because in a pasture system, it's degraded by itself. And so the whole system tends to get stronger and stronger over here, whereas this side, the system tends to get more and more weak over time. And one more piece of it is energy. There's been some pushback. There have been some attempts to put in solar farms around the state and around the country. And one key thing is that 1 acre of solar panels will produce 100 times more energy than an acre of corn ethanol. That's pretty phenomenal, isn't it? 100 times. And the thing is that then if you have a perennial crop underneath it, you're actually building the soil while you're doing that. And agrivoltaics is a way of combining agriculture and solar photovoltaics, where you can have, I have a friend who's had for 20 years, he had solar panels above the cows in the pasture, so the cows graze the land, and you got the solar as well. So that's complementary. You can build the whole ecology, at the same time you're producing a lot more energy. So we have to be aware that the whole ethanol industry, I think, is going to collapse, because with electric vehicles coming on, we have to be thinking ahead. I shouldn't be political here, but I don't think it is really. About 5 years ago, I wrote a letter to editorial in the Des Moines Register, and pointing out that electric vehicles are coming, and that we have to, what we're going to do with the 7 million acres that now they're going to corn ethanol. In Iowa, 7 million acres going to make corn ethanol. And there was a response next week by the head of the ethanol industry, and he said, we tried electric vehicles in the 70s, they didn't work then, and they're not going to work now. So that's the response that they have. I should end it in a more positive way here. but I think the key thing is that the circular economy works on every level, on the level of the soil, on the level of the plants, on the level of the whole community. And in our case, we have about, counting Susan and I, we have about 9 people working in a dairy. So we're part of the dairy, the community economically too, and try to recycle that through the community. So on all these different levels, and we need to look for food sovereignty at the national level, global level too. And if you break it in any way anywhere along the way, the nutrient level, you get pollution. If you break it on the level of cows being confined, you get a problem. Like Wendell Berry said, we took an elegant solution of cows on the landscape. We broke it up into 2 pollution problems of industrial crop production polluting and industrial livestock production polluting. So that's all I'm going to say.